Stop. Listen carefully, this is not random, and you are not early or late. There are only 2 seconds left, and that does not mean panic, it means interruption. Heaven has stepped into your timeline before something irreversible settles in your life. My child, can you feel it? That tension, that quiet pressure in your chest, the sense that something is about to lock into place. Fear has been whispering to you, you're too late. You missed your chance. It's already decided. But heaven is speaking something completely different. This is not your ending, this is your moment of clarity. These 2 seconds are not measured by a clock. They are measured by awareness. By awakening. By the exact moment you realize you still have a choice. And this is why the message came the way it did, urgent, direct, impossible to ignore. Because something has been forming around you, something you almost agreed to without realizing it. A pattern, a decision, a direction that felt safe but was quietly pulling you away from alignment. Fear made it look reasonable. Delay made it feel normal. But heaven sees where it leads. And my beloved, there is something else you must understand, something that may shock you. Archangel Michael is not standing in anger over you, he is grieving. Not because you failed, but because you almost settled. Do you hear the difference? This is not condemnation. This is compassion under urgency. He sees the version of you that was meant to rise, the doors that were meant to open, the protection that has been surrounding you, and he sees how close you came to stepping out of that covering simply because you were tired, confused, or afraid to move. And that grief, it is not weakness. It is love that refuses to let you quietly drift away from your purpose. Pause for a second and ask yourself honestly, what have you been about to accept that doesn't truly align with who you are becoming? Because that is where these 2 seconds live. Right there, in that almost decision. Now listen closely, because this is where it becomes even more unexpected. There is someone watching you. Not in a way of danger, but in a way of attention. A person of influence. A person of resources. Someone whose reach could shift your current situation in ways you cannot yet imagine. And they are not watching the version of you that stays stuck, they are watching the version of you that chooses alignment. But here is the tension, you cannot step into that level while holding onto what is pulling you back. So the interruption had to happen. Right now. Because what you do next determines whether that attention turns into opportunity, or passes you by unnoticed. And in this moment, you are not being rushed, you are being awakened, right before everything changes. And the reason you feel that shift right now is because this was never just another moment passing by. This was sent. My child, you did not stumble onto this by accident. You were positioned. There is a difference between scrolling and being summoned, and deep down, you can feel which one this is. If it were random, it would pass through you without weight. But it didn't. It stopped you. It pulled your attention. It made you pause. That is not coincidence, that is alignment. Fear tries to reduce everything to chance. It whispers, this is just another video, just another voice, just another idea you'll forget in a few minutes. But heaven does not work in randomness. Heaven works in precision. Timing. Placement. You were meant to hear this now, not later, not yesterday, now. Because something in you has reached a point where you are ready to recognize what you could not see before. And I need you to understand who is speaking into this moment, because clarity changes everything. Archangel Michael does not come as a figure of intimidation. He comes as a protector, a warrior of alignment, one who stands at the edge between confusion and clarity and calls you back when you begin to drift. His presence is not about fear, it is about urgency with purpose. He does not interrupt your life to control you. He intervenes to protect what is already assigned to you. And that is why the tone of this message feels different. It carries both warning and breakthrough at the same time. Do you notice it? On one side, there is a clear alert, something has been off, something has been pulling you slightly out of alignment, and if ignored, it will lead to more delay, more frustration, more questions without answers. But on the other side, there is something powerful waiting, realignment, acceleration, and unexpected doors that only open when you step back into position. This is not a message of punishment. This is a message of correction before consequence. Pause here for a moment and ask yourself, why did this feel like it was speaking directly to me? Because it is. Because you have been standing in a space where things almost make sense, but not quite. Where you've been moving, but not advancing. Where you've been trying, but not seeing the kind of results that match your effort. That is not failure. That is misalignment. And here is the part many people misunderstand, so listen carefully. What is being called disobedience is not about you being a bad person, or making some unforgivable mistake. It is not moral condemnation. It is something much more subtle, and much more important. It is about being out of sync with what you already sensed was right. It is the moments you felt a nudge but ignored it. The times you knew something wasn't for you, but stayed anyway. The decisions you delayed because fear sounded more logical than faith. That is the disconnection being addressed. Not who you are, but where you are standing. And once you see that, everything begins to shift. Because if misalignment is the issue, then realignment is the answer, and that means nothing is permanently lost. But there is still something you haven't been told yet. Something about why this moment matters more than the others you've experienced before. And it connects directly to what has been quietly observing your choices from a distance. And before anything is corrected, before anything is asked of you, you need to know this: nothing you've been carrying has gone unnoticed. My child, there is a version of your story that people see, and then there is the truth of what you have actually endured. People saw you continuing, showing up, smiling when necessary, handling responsibilities. From the outside, it looked like you were fine, just going through a phase. But heaven saw something entirely different. Heaven saw the weight behind your silence. The nights where your thoughts wouldn't slow down. The quiet calculations about money, about survival, about how much longer you could stretch what you have. The moments you checked your account and felt that tightness in your chest, not because you are careless, but because you have been trying to hold everything together with limited resources. You were not just managing. You were carrying pressure that few people truly understood. And then there was the betrayal. Not always loud, not always dramatic, but real. The moment you realized someone you trusted did not see you the way you saw them. The subtle shift in energy. The broken expectation. The support you thought would be there, that wasn't. And you didn't even make a scene about it. You adjusted quietly. You pulled back. You told yourself to be strong. But heaven saw the sting you didn't express. Let me ask you something honestly. How many times did you say, "It's okay," when it actually wasn't? That matters. Because what others labeled as resilience was sometimes you absorbing more than you should have had to carry. And then came the isolation. Not necessarily being physically alone, but feeling unseen even in a room full of people. Conversations that stayed on the surface while your real concerns stayed buried. The sense that if you spoke fully, you might not be understood, or worse, you might be dismissed. So you kept parts of yourself quiet. You figured it out on your own. You became your own support system. And that strength, while admirable, also became exhausting. There were moments you wanted clarity, just a clear sign, a direct answer, something that would tell you, this is the right move, go forward. But instead, you were met with delays. Opportunities that looked promising but fell through. Plans that made sense but didn't progress. Doors that seemed open, then suddenly closed. From your perspective, it felt like resistance. Like something wasn't working. Like maybe you were doing something wrong. But from heaven's perspective, it was protection. There were paths you were ready to walk down that would have drained you even further. Connections that looked right on the surface but carried complications you could not yet see. Timing that felt delayed to you, but was actually preventing deeper loss. Do you see the contrast? What felt like rejection was often redirection. What looked like silence was actually restraint. And what seemed like being overlooked was in many ways you being preserved. Even your confusion had context. There were times you didn't know which step to take next. You questioned your own judgment. You wondered if you had missed something important or misunderstood a signal. But confusion does not always mean you are lost. Sometimes it means you are standing between what no longer fits, and what has not yet fully revealed itself. That space is uncomfortable. But it is also temporary. And here is the truth that needs to land with you now: you were never abandoned in any of this. Every moment of pressure, every silent disappointment, every internal question, you were seen through all of it. Not judged. Not dismissed. Seen. And the fact that you are still here, still listening, still open to understanding what comes next, that says something important about you. It says you didn't give up, even when it would have been easier to detach. It says there is still alignment within you, even if it felt buried under stress and uncertainty. But now that you've been seen, now that your experience has been acknowledged, something shifts. Because validation is not the end of this message, it is the foundation for what comes next. And what comes next requires honesty, not about your pain, but about the one place where things quietly began to move out of alignment. And now that you've allowed yourself to be seen, we can finally speak about the one thing that quietly shifted everything. My child, listen closely. This is not where you are blamed. This is where you understand. Because what has been called disobedience is not rebellion. It is not defiance. It is not you turning away in anger or rejecting what is right. It is something far more subtle. It is hesitation at the edge of your next step. It is the moment you felt clarity, and then paused just long enough for doubt to speak louder. You told yourself, "I'm just being careful. I don't want to make a mistake. I need to think this through." And on the surface, that sounded wise. Responsible. Even mature. But look at what it created. You stayed in places you had already outgrown. You held on to situations that no longer matched who you were becoming. You delayed decisions that were already clear in your spirit. Do you see the contrast? What you believed was wisdom, slowly became stagnation. And I need you to hear this without judgment. It made sense why you did it. You had already been through disappointment. You had already experienced loss, confusion, and broken expectations. So of course you wanted to move carefully. Of course you didn't want to rush into another situation that might drain you. But fear has a way of disguising itself as logic. It doesn't always say, "Be afraid." Sometimes it says, "Wait a little longer. Stay where it's familiar. Don't risk what little stability you have left." And that voice feels safe. But it keeps you still. Let me ask you something. How many times did you feel a quiet inner push to move forward, and instead you chose to wait for more confirmation? Not because you didn't believe, but because you didn't feel fully secure. That is where alignment began to slip. Not in a dramatic moment. Not in a visible mistake. But in repeated small pauses where fear outweighed trust. And this is where another layer comes in, one you may not have fully recognized. There has been subtle interference around you. Not loud enough to alarm you, but consistent enough to slow you down. Distractions that pulled your focus away at the exact moment you were about to decide. Voices, internal or external, that introduced just enough doubt to make you second-guess what you already sensed. Delays that made you question whether the opportunity was ever real. This is how spiritual resistance often works. It does not always block the door completely. Sometimes it just keeps you standing in front of it, unsure whether to walk through. And over time, that uncertainty becomes its own kind of barrier. But here is what you must understand: this blockage is not permanent. Nothing has been destroyed. Nothing has been taken beyond recovery. You have not missed your destiny. You have simply been slightly out of position. And position can be corrected. Quickly. In a moment. This is why the urgency exists, but not panic. Because the shift you need is not massive, it is precise. It is not about rebuilding your entire life. It is about choosing differently at a specific point. And that point is closer than you think. There is a decision in front of you, one you have already been circling. You've thought about it more than once. You've felt both the pull toward it and the hesitation away from it. And you've been waiting for a sign that feels undeniable. But what if the sign is not something new? What if it is the clarity you already felt, before doubt interrupted it? Pause here and consider this carefully. What is the one thing you know you need to move toward, but have been delaying? That is not random. That is the exact place where alignment was lost. And it is also the exact place where it can be restored. Now here is the part that brings everything together. Those 2 seconds you heard about earlier, they are not about time running out. They are about the exact moment when you stop negotiating with fear, and choose alignment without overthinking it. A decision. A step. A shift. That is all it takes. And when that happens, what felt blocked begins to move again. But before that movement begins, you are going to be faced with a clear choice, one that will show you, without confusion, whether you are ready to stay where you are, or finally step into what has been waiting for you. And now you can feel it, can't you? The moment is no longer distant or abstract, it is right in front of you. My child, this is the place where everything separates. Not because something is being taken from you, but because something is being revealed to you. There are 2 paths before you, and for the first time, you can clearly see the difference between them. One feels familiar, controlled, predictable. The other feels uncertain, but alive. Fear immediately begins to speak when you stand at this intersection. It asks questions that sound reasonable on the surface, but carry weight underneath them. What if you fail this time? What if you lose more than you gain? What if this is another disappointment waiting to happen? And because you have experienced loss before, those questions do not feel imaginary. They feel justified. So the safer path begins to look appealing again. Stay where you are. Maintain what you can. Avoid unnecessary risk. Keep things steady, even if they are not fully right. And here is the truth, you can choose that path. Nothing will collapse overnight. There will be no immediate consequences, no dramatic loss, no visible alarm. Life will continue. You will wake up, go through your routines, handle your responsibilities, and from the outside, everything will look stable. But inside, something will remain unsettled. Because staying safe will not bring you forward. It will keep you in a cycle you already understand. The same questions will return. The same frustrations will surface. The same quiet awareness, that you are capable of more, meant for more, but not moving into it, will stay with you. That is the real cost of staying. Not punishment, but stagnation. Now look at the other path. The one that requires movement. The one that asks you to trust what you already sensed, even without having every detail mapped out. Faith does not ignore risk. It simply sees beyond it. It asks a different question entirely. What if this is the door you prayed for? Pause there. Because that question carries a different kind of weight. What if the opportunity you've been waiting for does not arrive with complete comfort, but with a need for courage? What if alignment feels unfamiliar at first, simply because you've been standing in the wrong place for too long? This path does not promise instant ease. But it does promise movement. Clarity begins to replace confusion. Energy returns where there was exhaustion. Momentum builds where there was delay. And most importantly, you begin to feel like yourself again, not the version shaped by survival, but the version aligned with purpose. Now listen carefully, because this is where something unexpected connects. That attention you heard about earlier, the one watching from a distance? It does not respond to hesitation. It responds to alignment. Think of it this way. There are moments in life when your decisions quietly signal who you are becoming. Not through words, but through action. And there are people, opportunities, and levels of influence that are drawn to that signal. Not by accident. By recognition. This billionaire is not just about money. It represents access. Influence. A doorway into a level you have not yet experienced. But here is the truth, those doors do not open for potential alone. They open for alignment in motion. If you remain in hesitation, the signal stays unclear. If you choose safety over movement, the version of you that is being observed never fully shows up. And so the opportunity continues past you. Not because you were unworthy, but because you were not in position when it mattered. Feel the difference. This is not pressure. This is clarity. You are not being forced into anything. You are being shown what each choice creates. One path maintains what is. The other activates what could be. And the decision itself? It is simpler than you have made it. Not easy, but simple. It is the moment you stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start asking, "What if I'm ready?" Because readiness is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move with it anyway. Take a breath and be honest with yourself right now. Which path have you been leaning toward? And more importantly, why? Because your answer reveals everything. There is no need to rush, but there is a need to decide. Not someday. Not when everything feels perfect. But at the point where clarity has already been given. And as you stand here, between what feels safe and what calls you forward, something within you is already beginning to shift. Because the moment of choice is not just about deciding your path. It is about preparing your next step. And that next step is closer, and more practical, than you think. And now that the choice is clear, you are not left wondering what to do next. This is where many people pause, waiting for something bigger, louder, or more obvious. But my child, alignment does not begin with something dramatic, it begins with something precise. This is your response to the moment you are in. Not overthinking. Not delaying. But moving with clarity. So listen carefully, because what I am about to give you is simple, but it must be taken seriously. Step 1 is your discernment check. Before you move anywhere, you must ask yourself one honest question. Is this fear guiding me, or is this wisdom guiding me? There is a difference, even if they sometimes sound similar. Fear speaks in urgency without peace. It rushes you or freezes you. It fills your mind with, what if everything goes wrong? It focuses on loss, embarrassment, or uncertainty. Even when it sounds logical, it leaves you unsettled. Wisdom, on the other hand, may still acknowledge risk, but it carries a quiet steadiness. It does not panic. It does not pressure. It simply shows you what is true, even if that truth requires courage. So pause for a moment and revisit the decision in front of you. When you think about stepping forward, do you feel a calm knowing beneath the discomfort? Or do you feel a chaotic pressure pushing you in every direction? That answer reveals your guide. And here is the key, alignment begins when you stop letting fear have the final word. Now step 2. Immediate release. There is something you already know you need to let go of. It may be a habit that keeps you distracted. A connection that drains your energy. A pattern of delay that convinces you to wait a little longer. Whatever it is, it has been quietly holding you in place. And you have recognized it more than once. This is not about removing everything at once. It is about identifying the one thing that is most clearly out of alignment right now. The one thing that, if released, would create space for movement. Ask yourself directly, what am I holding on to that I already know is no longer right for me? Do not overcomplicate the answer. You felt it immediately. That is what must be released. And release does not always mean dramatic confrontation. Sometimes it simply means a clear internal decision. You stop feeding it. You stop returning to it. You stop allowing it to define your next step. That is enough to begin. Now step 3. This is where many hesitate, but it is also where everything shifts. You must take a bold micro-action within the next 24 hours. Not a massive leap. Not a perfect plan. A decisive step. Something that moves you out of hesitation and into motion. If the alignment is toward a new opportunity, that step might be sending the message, making the call, applying, or initiating the conversation. If the alignment is away from something, that step might be setting a boundary, declining an option, or choosing not to return to what you already released. The size of the action is not what matters. The direction is. Because movement creates clarity. Waiting creates confusion. Let me say that again so it settles within you. Movement creates clarity. Waiting creates confusion. You have been waiting for clarity before moving, but in this moment, clarity comes through movement. This is the shift. Now here is something important to understand. You do not need to feel completely ready to take this step. Readiness is often revealed after you begin, not before. So if you are waiting to feel fully confident, you may remain still longer than necessary. Instead, act from alignment, not from comfort. Now step 4. You anchor this with a simple alignment declaration. Not something long or complicated. Just something honest and clear that brings your decision into focus. You can say it quietly, in your own words, but let it carry intention. I choose alignment over fear. I release what no longer serves me. I move forward with clarity, even if I don't see every detail yet. Feel the difference when you say that. It is not about forcing belief. It is about confirming direction. And once that direction is set, your actions begin to follow it more naturally. Now step back and look at what you have just done. You have checked your guidance. You have released what was holding you. You have taken a step forward. You have aligned your intention. This is not passive waiting. This is active alignment. This is what obedience truly looks like. Not perfection. Not having everything figured out. But responding to clarity with action. Many people stay stuck because they believe they need to get everything right before they move. But alignment does not require perfection. It requires willingness. And you have that. Otherwise, you would not still be here, listening, considering, opening yourself to what is being revealed. Now let me ask you something directly. What is the one action you can take today that reflects the version of you that is ready to move forward? Not tomorrow. Not when it feels easier. Today. Because this is how you respond to the moment you were given. This is how you step into those 2 seconds. Not by rushing blindly, but by choosing clearly. And as you begin to move, something else will begin to happen, small at first, but undeniable. You will start to notice shifts around you. Signals. Openings. Responses you did not see before. And those signs will confirm what you are stepping into. And as you begin to move, you may wonder, how will I know it's working? Listen closely, my child, because this is where many people miss what is actually happening. They expect something loud, immediate, undeniable. But alignment does not always announce itself with noise. It often begins with subtle shifts. And if you are not paying attention, you may overlook them and fall back into the thought, nothing is happening. That is what confusion says. Confusion looks at your life and measures only what is obvious. It wants instant proof, immediate results, something dramatic that confirms everything at once. And when it does not see that right away, it begins to whisper again, see? Nothing has changed. But heaven measures differently. Heaven looks at movement, not just outcomes. And the moment you realign, movement begins, even if it is quiet at first. So let me show you what to watch for. The first sign is a return of clarity. Not perfect certainty, but a noticeable reduction in inner conflict. Decisions that once felt heavy begin to feel simpler. You stop going in circles mentally. You begin to know what to do next without overanalyzing every detail. Have you ever experienced that moment when something just clicks, and the confusion you carried suddenly feels unnecessary? That is alignment speaking. The second sign is a shift in your energy. Where there was exhaustion, there is now a subtle renewal. You may still have responsibilities, challenges, and things to handle, but you no longer feel drained in the same way. There is a sense of forward motion inside you, even before your external situation fully reflects it. This is important. Because energy often shifts before circumstances do. The third sign is unexpected contact or opportunity. A message you were not expecting. A conversation that opens a new direction. An idea that leads you somewhere you had not considered before. These are not random. They are responses to your position. When you move into alignment, you begin to intersect with things that were always there, but not accessible to you before. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, have you ever noticed how certain opportunities seem to appear only after you make a specific decision? That is not coincidence. That is alignment unlocking access. The fourth sign is small confirmations. Not overwhelming, but consistent. You may hear something at the right moment, see a repeated message, or feel a quiet sense of reassurance that you are on the right path. These confirmations are not meant to replace your decision, they are meant to support it. They come after you move, not before. And this is where your awareness matters. Because if you are still looking for one massive sign, you may overlook the series of smaller ones guiding you forward. Now let me bring you back to something you heard earlier. That attention on you. The one described as a billionaire. Understand this clearly, it may not always appear in the exact form you imagine, but it represents something very real. Access to a higher level. Influence noticing you. Opportunity recognizing alignment. When you begin to move differently, you become visible in a different way. Your decisions start to reflect clarity, and that clarity attracts attention from places that respond to it. This could show up as someone with resources, someone with connections, or simply an opening that carries more weight than what you've experienced before. But here is the key. That level does not respond to hesitation. It responds to movement. So when you step into alignment, you are not just changing your direction, you are changing what can now see you. And this is why timing matters. Because once alignment happens, things may begin to move faster than you expect. Doors that were closed may open quickly. Responses that used to take time may come sooner. Situations that felt stuck may begin to shift. This is not because everything suddenly changed. It is because you did. And your position determines your access. Now here is a question you need to consider carefully. If things begin to move quickly, will you recognize it as alignment, or will you hesitate again because it feels unfamiliar? Because speed can sometimes feel just as uncomfortable as delay. But when movement comes, it is not meant to overwhelm you. It is meant to confirm that you are no longer standing still. So do not dismiss the small shifts. Do not ignore the subtle confirmations. Do not assume that nothing is happening just because everything has not fully manifested yet. Look closer. Pay attention. Because the signs are already beginning. And as they continue to unfold, they are leading you into something greater than just movement, they are leading you into a completely different season of your life. And as those signs begin to unfold, you are not just witnessing small changes, you are stepping into a different season entirely. My child, this is where the shift becomes visible. Not all at once, not in a way that overwhelms you, but in a steady, undeniable transition from who you had to be, into who you are now becoming. For a long time, your identity was shaped by pressure. You were the one figuring things out quietly. The one carrying more than you spoke about. The one adjusting, adapting, and enduring without much recognition. From the outside, it looked like you were simply navigating life. But inside, there was a constant question: when will things begin to move for me? That question came from a place of feeling overlooked. Not ignored completely, but not fully seen either. You knew you had more to offer, more to step into, but the opportunities did not always match that awareness. And over time, that gap created doubt. Not loud doubt, but subtle. The kind that whispers, maybe this is just how things are. But that identity is no longer where you remain. Because alignment changes how you are positioned, and position changes what can now find you. This is the beginning of being seen differently. Not because you are trying harder, but because you are standing differently. Do you feel the contrast? Before, you were striving to be noticed. Now, you are becoming positioned to be recognized. That is a completely different experience. And this is where restoration begins to take shape in practical ways. Your finances may not transform overnight, but they begin to stabilize. The constant tension starts to ease. You make clearer decisions with what you have. Opportunities that create growth, not just survival, begin to appear. It is not about sudden wealth, it is about sustainable movement. You begin to feel less like you are barely holding things together, and more like you are building something with direction. At the same time, opportunities start aligning with who you actually are. Not random distractions. Not things that drain you. But doors that make sense. Connections that feel mutual. Situations where your effort leads somewhere, instead of circling back to the same place. This is how you know the shift is real. Things begin to fit. And as that happens, something else returns, your confidence. Not forced confidence. Not pretending to have everything figured out. But a grounded sense of self. You begin to trust your decisions again. You stop second-guessing every step. You move with more certainty, even when you are still learning. That is the restoration of your inner alignment. And here is what you need to understand clearly. This is not luck. This is not something that randomly appeared in your life. This is the result of position. When you moved, when you released, when you chose alignment, you changed where you stand. And where you stand determines what can reach you. Now let us return to something that once felt distant or even confusing. That attention you heard about earlier. The one described as someone with influence, with access, with the ability to shift your situation. This is where the understanding deepens. That attention is not suddenly appearing out of nowhere. It is responding to the signal you are now giving. Clarity. Movement. Alignment. These are visible, even when you think they are not. People who operate at higher levels, whether in opportunity, influence, or resources, are not only looking for talent or potential. They are looking for alignment. Consistency. Readiness expressed through action. And that is what you are beginning to embody. So when attention comes toward you, it is not because you chased it. It is because you became visible to it. That is the difference. And that is why this moment matters so much. Because the version of you that felt overlooked would not have recognized or sustained that level. But the version of you now stepping forward? That version is ready to receive, to respond, and to grow within it. So do not minimize what is happening. Do not reduce it to coincidence. You are transitioning from a season of survival into a season of positioning. From being overlooked into being entrusted. And that trust does not come with pressure, it comes with responsibility and opportunity working together. Take a moment and reflect. Can you see how the pieces are starting to connect? The delays. The protection. The correction. The decision. They were not separate experiences. They were all leading here. And as this new season continues to unfold, you will not walk through it alone. Because there are others who are also stepping into alignment, others who will understand this shift, support it, and grow alongside it in ways you have not yet fully experienced. And as this new season begins to unfold, there is something you must not return to, the belief that you are walking through this alone. My child, for a long time, isolation felt normal to you. Not because you chose it, but because it became familiar. You learned how to carry things quietly. You learned how to process your thoughts without always sharing them. You learned how to move forward without expecting too much support, because experience taught you that not everyone would understand your journey. And while that strength helped you survive, it also made you feel separated. Like your path was something only you could fully see. But alignment does something powerful, it begins to connect you. Not to everyone, but to the right ones. There are others who are walking a similar path right now. Others who have felt the same pressure, the same confusion, the same quiet desire for clarity and movement. And just like you, they are stepping into alignment, one decision at a time. You are not the only one hearing this message and recognizing yourself in it. You are part of something shared. And there is strength in that. Because when you realize that others are moving forward too, something shifts inside you. The weight feels lighter. The uncertainty feels more manageable. The journey feels less isolating. So instead of staying silent, this is a moment to acknowledge where you stand. Not for validation from others, but as a declaration within yourself. If this message has spoken to you, if you recognize that shift happening within you, you can simply affirm it. You might write something like, aligned, or I'm ready. Not as a requirement. Not as a performance. But as a clear agreement with the direction you are choosing. Sometimes, putting it into words makes it more real. And it also allows others to see that they are not alone either. That is how quiet connection begins. Now understand this as well. Staying connected to guidance is not about fear of missing something, it is about staying grounded as you continue to move forward. There will be more moments of clarity ahead. More decisions. More opportunities to align. And staying in a space where that guidance continues can help you remain steady when things begin to move faster. So if you choose to stay connected here, to return, to listen again, it is not out of obligation. It is out of alignment. It is a way of keeping yourself anchored as your environment begins to shift. And there is one more thing. There may be someone in your life right now who is standing where you were not long ago. Confused. Hesitating. Quietly struggling to understand their next step. You don't need to force anything. But you can share this message with them. Not to convince them. But to offer clarity where there may currently be uncertainty. Because sometimes, the same way this found you, it can reach someone else at exactly the right moment. That is how alignment expands. Not through pressure. But through connection. So take a moment and recognize what is happening here. You are not isolated anymore. You are aligned. And alignment has a way of bringing the right people, the right support, and the right understanding into your path, often when you least expect it, but exactly when you need it. And as this sense of connection strengthens, something within you becomes even more grounded. Because you are not just moving forward, you are being supported as you do. And from that place of support, you are now ready to seal what has begun within you. And now, as everything settles into place, you can feel the difference within you. The urgency that once felt like pressure, has become clarity. The tension that once felt like panic, has become direction. My child, this is where you seal the shift. Not with fear. Not with striving. But with calm alignment. So take a moment, wherever you are, and center yourself. Breathe slowly. Let your thoughts quiet just enough to be present. And receive this. Heavenly Father, I come into alignment with what has been revealed. I release every place where fear has guided me instead of truth. I let go of hesitation, of delay, of anything that has kept me out of position. Restore my clarity where confusion once lived. Strengthen my courage where doubt once spoke louder. Guide my steps with precision, not pressure. Protect my path from distractions that would pull me back. Surround me with the right opportunities, the right people, and the right timing. I choose to move forward, not perfectly, but willingly. I trust that what is meant for me will meet me as I align. And I receive peace in this moment, knowing I am not alone, and I am not late. Now sit with that for a second. Feel the difference between panic and peace. Panic tells you everything must happen immediately or you will miss it. Peace tells you that as you move in alignment, what is meant for you cannot pass you by. That is the shift. You are no longer reacting out of fear. You are responding with clarity. And that changes everything. Now hear this final truth clearly. This message was never a warning of loss. It was an invitation. An invitation to realign before things became heavier. An invitation to step forward before delay turned into frustration. An invitation to recognize that you still have agency in your path. So do not walk away from this moment unchanged. Do not return to the same hesitation that held you before. You already know what needs to be done. You have felt it. You have seen it. You have acknowledged it. Now act on it. Even if the step feels small. Even if it feels unfamiliar. Even if you are still building confidence as you move. Because movement is what confirms alignment. And alignment is what unlocks what comes next. Let today be different. Not because everything around you has instantly changed, but because you have. You are no longer standing at the edge, wondering. You are stepping forward, aware. And that awareness carries power. So go forward with that. Make the call. Take the step. Release what you already know is behind you. Choose what you already know is ahead of you. And trust that as you do, things will begin to meet you in ways they could not before. You are seen. You are guided. And no matter what fear tried to convince you of before, hear this clearly now. It is not too late for you. It never was.